Okay, well, welcome everyone. My name is Laura Raymond. I work with the Washington State Department of Agriculture, where I lead what we call the Regional Markets Program. And the Regional Markets Program supports small and direct marketing farms of various sizes with technical assistance, specifically focused around accessing the markets that you all would like to connect with that are a good fit for your products and your scale. The Regional Markets Program also includes the Small Farm Direct Marketing, the Farm to School program. And so I'm really thrilled today to be, actually I was really honored to be invited to moderate this panel because it's a stellar panel. It really is. There's a lot of creativity and smarts, and many regions of the state are represented, so I think we're all in for a treat. And we're going to really do this fairly conversationally today. We're going to have a conversation around the work that is happening in regions and the projects that you're all engaged with, and then we'll open it up for a larger conversation with the room.
My name is Micha, and I manage Pierce County Fresh, so a local marketing campaign for Pierce County, and I'm also a farmer at Bright-Eyed Acres.
Jennifer Kleffner with Miles Away Farm, and I'm here from the Walla Walla Valley, and we have a group of farmers that are doing Walla Walla Grown.
Hi, I'm Sara Southerland. I'm the Food and Farming Director at Sustainable Connections, and we're a nonprofit up in Bellingham. We serve Whatcom and Skagit County, and started the Eat Local First campaign about 8 years ago. And the campaign is since expanding with partnerships with Tilth Alliance and partners on the Olympic Peninsula to be geared to be a statewide campaign in the coming year.
Hi, I am Sara Sullivan, and I'm the director of Gorge Grown Food Network. We are based in the Columbia River Gorge, so on the Washington side of the river. We cover Klickitat and Skamania County. And we have a whole suite of programs that are all about building a resilient local food system. And I might be a unique one on this panel in that our sort of brand, Gorge Grown, really grew out of forming this organization and network to support farmers, farmers markets, and a whole suite of other programs. So I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit.
I'm Steph Coffey. I'm with San Juan Islands Agricultural Guild. We're a countywide nonprofit agency that helps foster food systems in San Juan County, and we have the brand Island Grown in the San Juans.
Great, welcome. Thanks, you guys. I think it'd be nice to set the stage and hear a little bit more specifics about each of the programs that you're engaged with. So just a real brief, like sort of what's the goal of the marketing campaign or the branding effort that you've worked with, and where it came from? Because I think, as you mentioned, Sara, some of these were really farmer efforts, others were supported by an ag organization of some sort. So just give a little sense to get us started about why collective marketing, and how did it come to be in your area? What were the goals that it is trying to achieve?
Let's go down the line.
Sure, we can go down the line. Yeah, great.
So I'm new to this program. I started in February, and it's a few years old, but we're going through a rebranding with bringing me in. So I'm a farmer, and I'm very farmer-focused, but our program was developed originally out of, actually, I think Pierce Conservation District was the first organization that started it. Now we are funded through something called the Puyallup Watershed Initiative, which is focused on lots of different aspects of the economy around the Puyallup River watershed. And our program is basically a website directory for farms to get listed for free, and then we're trying to drive consumers to the website to find local produce. Just making connections and helping farmers market. But as a farmer, my focus now is also to give farmers those tools to help market themselves better. And so we are doing workshops, and we had a program this year that was free farmer, like professional photography for 12 farms in our county so that they can have good quality photography for their websites and marketing. And so just trying to figure out how we can best get farmers the tools that they need to be effective marketers.
So we started out as a group of farmers. We all knew each other. We're all practicing some form of regenerative agriculture. Some of us are organic, some of us aren't, but we all have a deep caring for the land. And we wanted an avenue for being able to sell our produce more year-round. We have a 6-month farmers market locally, but after that, there really wasn't an avenue. And so originally, the impetus was just a group of us getting together monthly. We called it Farm Club, and we would just get together and talk about, different things that we could do. We had guest speakers come in and talk to us about projects that they were doing. And just the ultimate goal was to try to come up with some kind of a venue to be able to sell our product more year-round. We were looking at potentially opening a small retail outlet, and that didn't come to fruition, but what shook loose was that the local independent grocery in the area was actually willing to carry product for us. And so that ended up being a great outlet. But in the process of all of that, we also realized how much we wanted to tell our story. Walla Walla is well known for onions, and so there's already kind of a story there. One of our members is Walla Walla Organic, so she's the only Walla Walla organic onion grower in the area, the only ones in the world, as she says. So we ended up all joining a $250 membership, and that went to buying or having a logo designed, putting together a website, putting together a Facebook presence, and so we're just mostly just trying to tell our stories, and under the idea that quality floats all boats. And so rather than we're all seeing each other as competitors, we're seeing each other as how can we all help each other to grow and better tell our stories. So that was the start of it.
Well, in the food and farming program at Sustainable Connections, we've always provided a bunch of community education, business-to-business connections to find more market outlets for local farms and local farmer business training. And the Eat Local First campaign kind of followed suit to how we got started as an organization. So Sustainable Connections, we're a local business network, and about 17 years ago, we formed from a group of local businesses coming together and saying, how can we best support each other? How can we encourage our community to spend our dollars with local independently owned businesses? And so the basis of Sustainable Connections was kind of a buy local campaign in itself for local businesses of all kinds from different industries. And then about 8 years ago, we were thinking about a local food version of that campaign and what that could look like. We did some market research and found that overwhelmingly people in our community said, yes, we want to buy local farm products and more local products, but it's hard to identify it where we're eating and shopping. That was the number one barrier that people noted towards buying more local farm and grown products. And so we formed a committee to start the campaign with really the goals of how can we increase sales for local farms and producers, how can we get more of the food that we eat in Whatcom County consumed in Whatcom County, and how can we increase the diversity of local products in all of our marketplaces, restaurants, grocery stores, distributors, food artisans. So we started the campaign then, and it's grown. We just rebranded last year and are really excited to be expanding with partnerships with Tilth and the Peninsula. So I'll say that for now.
So Gorge Grown started in 2006, and the first project was the Hood River Farmers Market. And at the time, that was the only farmers market in the Gorge. So we spent the next several years forming what we call the Rural Farmers Market Network and careening around this really, really rural area with a mobile market, a little Sprinter van, and serving as an anchor vendor for 9 other farmers markets. So by 2014, there were 10 markets in the Gorge. We had done a lot of work specifically with farmers around branding, marketing, things like staff management, business plans, and we realized we were at the level where we really needed to take local food marketing to the next level in order to really increase sales. We were starting to see sales kind of plateau at our farmers markets, so we secured funding through a USDA specialty crop block grant. It was called Fresh is Best, if you want to look that up. And part of what we did over the next 2 years was travel all around the Gorge and talk to people about what might motivate them to buy local. So that was kind of how our campaign got started and what shaped our messaging.
Island Grown in the San Juan started in 2007, and it was done through the county, a county commission, and also the NEBC helped start it. And it was focused mainly it was framed as a kind of like an organic certification. They really wanted to change the dial and try to promote more resilient, sustainable farming in San Juan County. San Juan County is the only GMO-free county in Washington, and there's a tremendous support for that type of thing in San Juan County. Since then, though, 2017, 2018, we started rebranding, and we'll dive into that, why we did that a little later. But now it is open to farmers, ranchers, people who do value-added products, retailers, people who may even use like agroforestry type products. It's open to really anybody that's making something in the San Juans. And then our target audience is switched to visitors. No secret that there's about 800,000 visitors that come every year to the San Juan Islands. Our focus is now switched to swing shoppers who are looking for that island experience, whether they take it home with them or they want to experience it there with their families. So we switched to a new theme, our new campaign, which is now Discover Heritage Tastes, Eat Island Grown.
That's great, and it's a perfect segue into my next question, which is understanding more about how you determined who your target audience for your marketing campaign and your brand was going to be, and how you determined then, knowing who that was, which messages you wanted to focus, or if you did it in that order. Maybe you started getting a campaign or a message out there and found it wasn't having the impacts that you hoped. You have a lot really different stories, origin stories for your brands. So I'm curious what your different experiences were with that process of identifying who to focus on and how to communicate with them, what messages to communicate. Sara, do you want to start?
Sure. Yeah, well, I think when we started, the first level of buy-in is coming from what we might call like a core shopper. So someone who is already going to the farmer's market, already going to the co-op, buying local, and mostly is shopping based on their values as a number one indicator attribute they're looking for. Because that, first you want to get buy-in, you want to get recognition, you want people to be able to see the logo, or we use this fork icon that restaurants can use on menus and folks can use on their products. You want people to be able to recognize that. So that was kind of our first wave. And the last few years, as our program has grown and we've expanded and had a number of businesses participating in the campaign, we've shifted more of our focus to what we call a swing shopper. So we work a lot with the data from the Hartman Group, which is a research firm out of Seattle that's doing a lot of sustainability and food research and food trends, and they're awesome. And they've been great enough to share some of that research with us. Normally, I think it's like $15,000 for one of their reports. Anyway, the swing shopper, if you can think of, is kind of the next, there's like an inner swing shopper, the next wave of customers. So outside of like that first 8% of core value-based shoppers, the next wave of consumers who are interested in local products. Maybe they're buying from some of you at farmers markets or farm stands or through CSA already, but they don't always shop with their values first. It's an attribute, but it might be health or convenience, price. And so how do we message to that audience? And we found we did a group focus groups a couple of years ago as we refreshed our campaign, a group of millennials, parents, and empty nesters, and did a lot of asking about messaging and different images that folks liked, and specifically recruited to find kind of a swing shopper audience. And it was a little surprising what we found. The messages that even that next wave of shoppers relates to is very different than like a consumer, the core consumer. So one example, one message we were using in the past in our campaign was vote with your fork. And to folks like you and me, we're like, yeah, rah, rah, that gets us really excited around local food because we're shopping with our values. Whereas that next wave of customer, that felt kind of admonishing and preachy to them. They wanted something softer, more feel-good. Things that came up were nourish the people you love, or the best flavors are from home. Kind of this more homey, like connect with me and my emotions feel. And so it's just been interesting as we've grown the campaign, looking to connect with the shoppers that we want to, and obviously it'll still resonate with a core audience who's already going to be doing the action anyway, buying the local food, but just made us think twice about how we're putting messaging out and how we encourage farmers and restaurants and the folks involved in the food system to be sharing out with their customers as well.
And Sara, it sounds like from what I've heard you talk about previously, you had sort of a similar experience, similar yet different, with Gorge Grown, and identifying what really were the messages that resonated with your local community.
Yeah. When we started the Spy Local campaign, we were really thinking about the people who never buy local, who never come to the farmers market, what might motivate them. And we hired a consultant to go out into the community with us. And we really focused on trying to meet people where they were, not in arenas where they were usually intersecting with the local food system. So went to some very bizarre meetings, like the Odd Fellows in Goldendale. It's like an old fraternity club. There were like red czar hats and like mallets and, just really trying to talk to people outside of what our normal circle was. And part of what we did was float 10 different messages to those people in a really interactive conversation. So the messages were around economics, self-reliance, freshness or flavor, packaging, and then health and community. And I would say what we found was really specific to our rural area. And really interesting in that the messages that we found that resonated most between places like Hood River versus the Dalles or Goldendale, if you're familiar with that area, were all about this idea of sort of like self-reliance and regional sovereignty, which we really weren't expecting. And coming from more urban areas, that was really interesting, kind of surprising to me. So there's a lot of kind of propaganda spread around, but there's a couple magazines in particular where we've distilled some of this messaging. And I would say one of the interesting, nuanced things that we found was, we live in an area where people have experienced a lot of natural disasters, right? And several times a year we're actually cut off from Portland when 84 shuts down, that kind of thing. So one of the messages that really stood out was 90% of the food eaten in the gorge is shipped from other areas. That's fine, but coupled with this, in the event of an energy crisis or natural disaster, we could be cut off from our food supply. So we're scaring people into buying local, basically. But that's very specific to our region, right? And we wouldn't have been able to find that out without these very intimate conversations. So the report on those conversations is quite long, and we have a lot of specific quotes from people in here. But I am happy to make this available to anyone, and I think it would be really helpful for anyone to read who's really interested in promoting local.
And Jennifer, with Walla Walla Grown, you also had sort of, you said earlier, Walla Walla is known for onions. It's also known for wine.
Yeah, all of the old onion farmers had kids, and the kids grew up and said, "I'm leaving this small town. I don't want to live here." And they all went away to college, and then they said, "I want to have kids. I want to raise them in a small town." And they all came back, and they said, "I don't want to grow onions," and so they're all growing wine. And literally, that is what happened. The generations there go back 4 or 5 generations, and we have a huge tourist market because of that. We also have, very similar to what you were just saying, we have the old school, very self-reliant, it's an agriculture area that's had agriculture since the 1860s at least. And so we're kind of doing battle with both ends of that spectrum. And we also have a huge influx of new people that are moving to the area. In the last couple of years, you make conversation at farmers market and you say, "So are you visiting for the weekend or do you live here?" And in the last couple of years, the more times that I get the answer, "We just moved here in the last 6 months," has gone way, way up. So, and the people that are moving to the area have that culture of appreciation for fresh local foods that our local old school folks didn't necessarily have, or at least didn't have it at the farmers market because they were already growing it in their backyard, and so they didn't need to come to the farmers market. So it's been an interesting balance of all of those things.
And San Juan Islands has some of that similar dynamic. And you mentioned earlier that you actually changed your messaging. Can you share about that?
Sure. So in 2017, we surveyed the community to see if the brand was really saying what we thought, what we were trying to say, which was the standard of organic certification, and which wasn't actually a certification. There was no accountability with it. But it turned out that they all, really overwhelmingly did not know what it was, that they thought it was just a sense of place. And so we stopped what we were doing and got some more data from other folks that were doing similar things. And then we also had the Visitors Bureau was doing a survey at the same time of over 1,000 visitors and locals to find out what they loved most about the islands. And the number one answer was the pastoral views, not the oceans and stuff, but the pastoral views. So we changed our messaging and brand around to hopefully tie those two things together is this sense of a pride of the local landscape, and telling the history and stories of the past and how the farmer has made that happen and continues to make that happen. And so our messaging is all about the storytelling, but then also tying it to products where you can find them today. I guess that's about it. Yeah.
Once you had determined who you really wanted to focus on, encouraging to buy local, how did you decide, and what did you decide to focus on in terms of the actual tools and strategies and mechanisms for communicating that? Does anyone want to start? I think that Pierce Fresh did something really interesting that you mentioned earlier with the farmer photos.
Yeah, so I am newer to this organization, and touching on that last question just a little bit, as a consumer myself and as a farmer, I didn't really know what Pierce County Fresh was before I joined, which to me was like a big red flag, right? Similar to what Steph was just saying, people were like, what is this? We had a few marketing materials out there, but it wasn't very cohesive. And so the first thing I did was, let's rebrand, let's have a solid, strong, recognizable logo so that eventually if we do get it into restaurants and stores, people will know what that means. But I also want farmers to have tools for themselves, because it takes a long time for a brand like Pierce County Fresh to really build. I want those farmers to have success while we're doing it. And so because we are a nonprofit with generous funding, we were able to hire a professional photographer who also donated in kind and did this process where people applied for the photo project, and we whittled it down to 12 for this year, and then each farm got a 2-hour photo shoot with professional photography, and they have access to all of their photos. We also have access, so the marketing materials that I passed around, those photos on the front that you have there are all from those photo shoots. And there's a slide up here that'll come around a couple times that has some pictures from that. And then what I'm excited about is that project itself is just very unusual and noteworthy. And so Venice and I, my partners over there, we did a big press release, and Sound Consumer, which is the magazine for PCC Community Markets, just featured us in their November issue, which is very exciting. And just that alone is getting our brand out there, but also those individual farmers are getting recognized. And so just little things like that where a farmer might not have the time to do that themselves. And then the other big thing that I'm really passionate about, as you know, because this is now my second workshop of the day, is workshops. And so we did a workshop earlier this year that was similar to the one Venice and I just did, which is just basic marketing skills. It was designed a little bit differently. And then next week, we're doing one about grant writing and just about what grants are available to farmers, because there's so much information, and I think farmers just need 3 hours to sit down and have someone tell them how to do these things, and then give them some of the tools and then the resources.
Sara with Gorge Grown. You mentioned when we were speaking before that you had started out with a farm guide and then decided to look to other strategies. Mm-hmm. Tell us more about that process.
Yeah, so we had one of these Who's Your Farmer little magazines that a lot of us around the Pacific Northwest have put a lot of money and a lot of staff time into. And I think it worked for a while when our local food movement was growing. And again, this is very specific to our region, so I'm not dissuading anyone from doing this, but it became really difficult to get farmers to participate and for chefs to really pick this thing up. And we started asking around, is this really helping you make connections? And almost all the people that we asked said no. We partnered with our local newspaper. It's called Hood River News. And they started producing this beautiful magazine called Savor the Gorge. So this is more story-oriented. This really tells, the full picture of what farmers in our region are doing. They too tried to continue the Who's Your Farmer guide by having farmers buy into it at I thought was a really reasonable price, $65 for the ad, distributed to 13,000 people, and still farmers didn't want to participate. So I don't really know all the reasons why that didn't work, but I think one of them is in our area, people really know each other. I mean, it's a really small, Hood River is 8,000 people. A lot of the people invested in local food already know the farmers. So we just had to shift gears. One of the most successful things that we've done instead of a printed guide is a yearly buyer-seller kind of matchmaking event, and that happens in January. And it's like speed dating. We get the buyers and sellers on two different sides of the table, and everyone speaks to everyone for a couple minutes, and they exchange cards. And that's the way that we can bring in people producing new, interesting products, and chefs or buyers that are new to the area who may not know who their farmers are.
Cool. Just as an aside, we had a farm map, similar kind of a project, and it's now dead. So very similar. What was happening was tourists were picking it up and just randomly showing up at people's farms, which is not what we were aiming for. So.
We kind of do all the things. Obviously all the online promotions, we have blogs and social media and newsletters. But when we think about campaign materials and how to get the word out, I kind of go through each of the different users. So, farmers and restaurants and grocers and consumers in our community, and how will each of those players be able to engage with the campaign, a business benefit from it, and the community recognize it. So we also have a printed guide that's still working, but we also launched an online tool called the Eat Local First Food Atlas that will also be expanded with Tilth and the Peninsula. It's an interactive online guide for farms and markets and local food around the area, which is exciting. And for farmers, we have twist ties, and we produce also laminated items for farmers market and to hold up in farm stands, things like that. For restaurants, we utilize, we knew we needed an icon for restaurants to be able to utilize on their menus next to items that were locally sourced. So with our rebrand in the middle of our Eat Local First logo, we have this fork icon, and that indicates local items, and that's been really helpful. With restaurants, we also create like a local sourcing map. We did that this year, and so they could hang something on their walls that they were, most restaurants aren't going to make that themselves, but showed where they're sourcing locally and promoted those farm names. And then also did things like making chalkboard stencils of the fork, just helping people meet them where they're at and what materials they're going to be working with. Shelf tags for grocery. And then for the community and consumers, we've done a pledge out at events when we do cooking demos and tabling events, stickers, bumper stickers. And then this year, my colleague Marissa back there came up with this idea to make these really cool, durable camping sporks, Find the Fork, which people have come across the way from farmers market festivals to come spin our wheel and learn about Eat Local First. So these have been a really expensive but good tool to promote the campaign. So, yeah.
Jennifer, you mentioned that one of the things that you were trying to achieve with Walla Walla Grown is just opportunities. Well, you started out with one objective, which was having opportunities to sell year round.
Right.
And actually, it sounds like achieved at least one avenue for that pretty quickly.
Right.
And then what?
We actually, the other thing that's happening is we have a local food promotion program grant for a feasibility study for a food hub. So we're working on that as a group, and then with other community members that are interested as well. And the push on the food hub is not just aggregation and distribution. We could use some of that, but we don't need a whole lot of that. What we really want to do is some value-added product. And so the design for this is to actually have specific products in mind, like a salsa, like a marinara sauce, maybe a popsicle, where we're actually, rather than just having a commissary kitchen, we're putting in production line, and we're being able to distribute not just in Walla Walla, but much more regionally and potentially to the west side of the state as well. So that's a much bigger long-term project. And it's an 18-month grant, and we're about 12 months into that. So we're in the process of actually penciling out the actual economics of those different product lines and what will be work. If you look at food hubs as a aggregate over national data, they're usually just right on the edge of solvent if they're just doing aggregation distribution kind of work. And when they add value added, all of a sudden they become regularly in the black. And we'd like to be able to do that and then have all the impacts back out into the community in terms of jobs and other things in the process.
So one of the things that almost all of you have mentioned, and it's something that when we talk about marketing, you guys hear all the time, right? It's all about telling a story, storytelling. What has that meant in the campaigns or brand development and campaigns that you've done? How have you been telling, in particular, farmer stories? Steph, have you guys engaged in that yet? Or are you just beginning?
Well, we used to do that quite a bit, farmer profiles, but not fresh sheets. So we don't have the funding to do that on a regular. You really need to do that on a weekly basis, and we just can't do it. So we're now doing farmer spotlights that focus on that. We know that we still need to talk about the regenerative practices or the farm's ethics. So those profiles are really focused about who they are, not so much about the product, but they still mention the product, but it's really about really getting to know your neighbor kind of thing. So that's what we've been doing. But they're not really out there that much yet because we're still taking the photos. We were able to get a grant to take some professional photos, and we're putting them together right now.
How has that looked for Pierce Fresh?
Well, if you were in my last workshop, you'll know that I talk a lot about storytelling, and that is really important because most of the consumers are not farmers, and they want that feel-good story, not just about the quality of the food, but they want to know the farmer, they want to understand that lifestyle, and they just want to feel good about it. And so I think farmers really need good quality photography to make that happen. And so with the added press that we're trying to get out of this project, we're also hoping to do like a launch party where we have some of those photos hanging around, and then we invite the public. We're going to use the story, starting with the stories, to build the brand awareness. And I think that's really the way for us to go because we're kind of starting over. Rather than trying to start from the top down, I want to start with the farmer and put them front and center and then be like, by the way, Pierce County Fresh, we have all these other farmers too. And so the photography project is something that was really successful and that we're going to try and do every year and just expand until maybe eventually we run out of farmers.
Hopefully not.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. More farmers, please.
How has Eat Local first worked with storytelling and telling? Do you tell the stories of individual farmers?
We do. We have a monthly newsletter that goes out where we have farmer spotlights and restaurant spotlights, and that's been a great tool at the eatlocalfirst.org site. And we also sit down with farmers and restaurants and the folks in the campaign and support farmers and food businesses in telling their own stories and do free marketing consultations and just help people think through what are the nuggets that I should be sharing and how can I do that. I think, a lot of us get into this work because we're passionate about farming and growing food, and we don't want to be necessarily the face of our farm and telling our own story, but like Micha was saying, people are hungry for that literally, and I think we need to assume that our customers know nothing about, I say assume your customers know nothing about what you grow, why you grow it, who you are, why you're doing it, like anything about that every single time. That's a huge value add. It's like you have this beautiful product, but then the story that comes with it, just continuing to tell that and assuming people haven't heard it before, I think is so key. So we help people in doing that, and also encourage a lot of we have a lot of business-to-business, like farmer chef networking events and a big farm-to-table conference in February, and really encourage people to do co-promotion and share examples of what that looks like. We do a business marketing toolkit every month that has sample social media posts and ways that you can engage in the campaign and telling your story, and restaurants telling the stories of their farmers and farmers telling the stories of where their product is going. And it can just be a great tool to lift each other up in this work in our communities and in the campaign, and leverage each other as marketing resources for very little investment in terms of dollars and just a little time and relationships. So.
It's been interesting in the work on the Food Hub. When you survey farmers and ask them what they want out of something like that, one of the things that always comes up is marketing help. Everybody wants marketing help. All the farmers want marketing help. But the other side of that sentence is always, but I don't want to lose my own identity. So it's been interesting for us. We do kind of co-marketing. I think we all kind of support each other and promote each other in a lot of different ways in terms of social media. But there's the opposite side of it, of what you're saying, which is I've spent a lot of time building my brand, and I don't want to lose that by suddenly getting aggregated with a whole bunch of other people under this, logo of whatever it is. And so we're trying to figure out how to walk that line and to do co-branding rather than to say, no, you're not going to lose your identity just because your tomatoes went in with my tomatoes on this jar of marinara. So it's a fine balance.
How have others of you grappled with that issue? Or has it been an issue? The concern of how do I leverage all the work I've put into developing my own brand if I participate in a collective marketing, which is power in numbers. That's the call to action, right? But how does it actually work in the programs you're working with?
In Northwest Washington, we haven't seen it be a huge issue in the farming community. We have a pretty strong collaborative farming community, and I think 92% of farmer participants in the campaign have said we've seen sales increase as a result of participating in this campaign. So you can't really argue with that. And we're not asking people certainly to make it the leading brand. It's a piece of your marketing. It's meant to complement your beautiful brand and your identity, not take it over. And also, it helps when community members, they can go to the farmer's market and see the brand. They can go to your farm stand, they can go to the restaurant, they can go to the grocery store. People start to connect the dots and see the value in participating. Where we have seen a little bit of challenge is in grocery participation. There's a little bit more of a high competition in grocery in our area. And so it's been challenging, to be honest, working with our co-op and then other grocery stores in the area, feeling like, well, if I participate in this campaign, we're not going to have our own unique local brand, and how do we work with that? And so it's a constant work in progress, but that's the main area that it's been a little bit more challenging in the grocery.
We haven't really seen that, other than we're also we will be developing a food hub that's supposed to launch in this spring. And that's where we're seeing the same thing, is that they're afraid they'll lose their identity, but they also get their own farm profiles on the hub. So we see the Island Grown label as helping to push that marketing forward for the hub, and we just have to show them and reassure them that that's by showing them the types of strategies and the different types of marketing that's available, to reassure them that that's not going to happen, that they will maintain their identity.
Okay, so we've been painting the beautiful picture of how this benefits 92%, say, an increase in sales with Eat Local, gorgeous, glossy storytelling, wonderful photos. It's all great. So how does this work, like the nitty-gritty of this? Who can participate? How does participation happen? Let's just start there with your various programs.
For us, right now, we're nonprofit funded, so we're fortunate in that it's free for farmers to participate, which I think goes a really long way. But I can say this because I'm a farmer. It's still really hard to get farmers to participate. I have sent so many emails, phone calls, Facebook messages, nudge, nudge, nudge. Like, it's free. Get on here. Like, there's no reason not to. And so I think buy-in for us has been right now the hardest part. I think it's helpful that I'm a farmer because then I can kind of speak their language. But even one of the farms that got the photography hasn't actually activated their profile on our website. So that can be really frustrating. So for us, I know eventually down the line we might need to go to a pay-to-play model, and that is worrisome because there has to be that obvious benefit, which a larger organization like Eat Local First that has this great strength, they can say, hey, look at this. You're getting something for paying, but for us, we're not there yet, and that's definitely something that's top of mind.
We're teeny tiny, so we started out with 6 different farms that were interested, 4 produce farmers and an egg farmer and a lamb meat farmer, and honestly, the egg farmer just kind of blew up of his own accord. And the lamb farmer is super cautious and just didn't want to spend the money. And so she never, even though she came to some meetings, she never actually ponied up. And it was a pay to play with us. It was $250, which wasn't a huge hardship, but it was enough we didn't just want everybody to be like, oh yeah, sure, I'll do that. We did want to be a little bit selective. And we don't have anything really in writing that's super specific, but other than just regenerative land stewardship, and yeah, so we're farmer funded. It's us, and there's buy-in simply because there's only a small number of us that are doing it, and we all did pitch in. So, yeah, I wish we had a nonprofit who was behind it.
It's not always that great.
I know. I've worked for nonprofits. I know.
Lots of models. Models. How about with the Eat Local campaign? I understand, like, some of the businesses take a pledge. Is that part of the expectation?
Right. Yeah. We also have a membership model, and that's a membership with the whole organization. And we have like a green building program and a waste program and an energy efficiency program. So it gets you benefits across the organization for $190 a year. So it's a pretty good value. We see it as a partnership. We put in a lot of extra effort to our members, but also do a lot of free stuff. Like you can come for free to the Farmer Chef Mixer and create new sales there. And so we open a lot up to everyone and give special extra promotion to our members. The pledge that we have businesses sign is primarily on the buyer end. And so for a restaurant or a grocery store to participate, they have to commit to sourcing from at least 2 local producers year-round, having at least 1 menu item that's year-round 50% or more locally sourced, and then committing to making a pledge to increase their current local food budget by 10% over the next year. And we're not policing people on these things, but we do ask every year of the buyers what percentage of your business's food budget is being spent with local producers, and we define local as a 4-county region. And so we're able to kind of see where people are at. We meet people, where they're at. If they're sourcing no local food and they join on, we help them get there before they can use the campaign materials, so we're not local washing. But also we work with folks that might be at 50%, like the really hardcore farm-to-table restaurants, and a 10% increase might be challenging. And so we say, what is feasible? Let's get an increase somehow. So, and then we work with those restaurants and provide technical assistance and things like a wholesale product directory that we produce annually, a list of product by farm and food business. That's a really easy guide and connect folks with the food hub. So we have a local food cost calculator tool we use. So just sitting down and having those real conversations about how can we actually fit this into menu item in your current purchasing schedule and really support in those ways too.
I think if I could go back and ask farmers and food producers to offer a small contribution to this in order to participate, that is what I would do. Because when we lost grant funding for this and asked them to even pay a nominal fee, they were not happy about that. And so that puts a ton of pressure on a nonprofit like Gorge Grown to continue to fund in perpetuity with grant money local food promotion, which we're doing the best we can. And we've doubled sales at our farmers market in the last 4 years. So I would say just as far as buy-in and participation too, we have done a lot of work with farmers market vendors around asking them to really participate and please, schedule ahead and post something the night before the farmers market. We have a couple really successful Instagram campaigns. One is sort of this market hall idea, hashtag market hall, asking customers to take photos of what they bought, and then we celebrate those. Farmers participate in a weekly fresh sheet, which we aggregate and distribute on Facebook, social media. And I can't underestimate or emphasize enough the importance of staffing for this. And so we have a full-time, she's a Hood River Farmers Market manager, but she's also does all of our outreach, newsletters, social media, et cetera. So she's sort of boots on the ground at the market, but also has, communication role. And then I would just say really engaging chefs as well. So they participate a lot in this Savor the Gorge magazine. This is a really lovely feature of 4, sexy local chefs. And the question was sort of what motivates them to buy local. And so I think that really helps just to get everybody's buy-in. Like, this is all our responsibility.
Oh, I mentioned earlier we are a membership. And we started out at $25 a year per person, and we didn't have a staff person to help manage that, so it was very difficult to try to keep track of the membership. We since now have a part-time person, and that person, and we raised the rate to $70, but you also get a free listing in either the guide or the map. So there's a value there. And then we also have a commercial kitchen, which really is a big hook for some people, some of the farmers. They get it at a screaming deal at $35 for 6 hours, and they can use it. So, yeah. So that is a main motivator. We do, we would never make it without grants, to be honest. There's no way the membership even comes close to paying for the advertising. Yeah, I think that's about it.
I think you're going to start to see more ferry traffic as people are coming to use that commercial kitchen.
Yeah, right. Well, it's available.
Everyone mentioned grants, I think, or nearly everyone has mentioned a grant. So I just wanted to let people know that during the happy hour session or the trade show, at the WSDA table, we do have a handout. I didn't bring it to this session here. From the USDA, that's a really nice overview of many of the grant programs. Some that were mentioned by the panel today are the Specialty Crop Block Grant Program, the Local Farmers Market Promotion, Local Food Promotion and Farmers Market Promotion Grants. What other ones were you?
Some counties have LTAC funding, which is
exactly, the lodging tax yeah. And partnering with your visitor bureau and looking at collaborations with tourism and agri-culinary tourism. Yeah. So I have just really, I'm going to do one last combo question, and you can choose to answer which portion of it you want, and I apologize because the question is a real mishmash. And then we'll open up for larger discussion. So I'm curious, in the work that you've done, your own roles in these programs, what is one thing that you either were really very pleasantly surprised by or just really enjoyed being a part of? And if you could each give an example, choose which question you want to answer, of a way that you have seen an individual farmer really leverage their participation in the collective marketing campaign to advance their own business.
I'm a broken record. Professional photography. As a farmer, it was really nice to be able to go and tour other farms while getting paid to do it, right? Because a lot of us don't have that kind of luxury. And to see what other people are doing and connect with them. But the farmers, and there's at least one in this room, right? That got photos? Maybe not. I thought I saw Alyssa. Oh, Amy.
There she
is. There's
Amy
one.
Moreno Sells
there's
in the corner.
At least 3 of them here at this conference that got the photos. And so actually, I'm going to help Amy rebuild her website this winter, and we're going to use all of those photos. And some of the other farmers that are here have already been using them predominantly in their social media, but they are going to start doing new marketing materials with them. And so it just feels good to know that something that we put a lot of time and energy and effort into was worth it and is paying for them.
I'm one of those rare farmers who actually loves marketing. And so it's that part of it for me has just been great fun. And this year I was able to kind of, through a strange series of events, we lost our market manager right before the market opened. And so a new person got thrown into that spot, and I took over the Facebook and Instagram marketing because it basically hadn't been done. Nobody had been doing it. And I was like, would it be okay if I did this for you since you're new? And he was like, please do. So I had a great time with that. And I think everybody has benefited. I think we've all been able to expand our footprint in terms of who we're selling to by being in the grocery stores. And I do wholesale. I have jams, and so I've picked up a little bit of wholesale account work around that. I mean, just, more advertising is good no matter what venue you're in. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out with the food hub work that we're doing as well. Well, this organization, Walla Walla Grown, we're talking 3 years. We're brand new, so.
Yeah, I would say I always encourage farmers to utilize us as much as you can. Like, the more that more information that farms send us to promote them, we're always looking out, but we are kind of a marketing channel for folks, and we can help make your message even bigger. And so taking advantage of the marketing that we provide and marketing consultations, and also utilizing the campaign, like, in all your channels and websites, products. It's really cool. Since we are engaging with a ton of buyers in the community and wholesale buyers, we've had a lot of feedback. They notice when farms are utilizing the collective brand and marketing, and they connect it back and get excited that it's like you're part of this network, and so it's like almost like a open invitation to connect in a more meaningful way. One thing that I've seen work really well is farmers going the extra mile with their wholesale buyers and sending those buyers information that they can use to promote your farm. So whether it's, a wholesale buyer, once every few months, sending them a photo, a little blurb about your farm or the product that you're selling to them, a little fork icon or the logo from your local campaign if they're participating, and just reminding them, hey, I would love if you could put this out on your newsletter or social media or your menu, and giving them an opportunity to also take ownership of your farm within their business, because then they'll be more likely to continue that purchasing relationship. That's a big one. And just those business-to-business promotions through all of the networking events that we do. The farmers that show up make a lot of new sales. Our trade meeting generates over $1 million in new sales each year from our follow-up surveys, and that's awesome. And it's just showing up and being there, talking to folks, and being willing to go out on a limb. So,
one of the things I'm really interested in right now, just personally and professionally, is finding arenas where we can come together across differences and across political divides. And I live in a very politically divided place, a place where it's sort of big ag versus small ag, huge farms. And I found it really hopeful that we can all come together around these ideas of self-reliance, community, pride in product from our place. And my favorite, very specific example of that is, you might have seen one photo up there. At all of our markets, we have these really simple chalkboards, and it just says, I love my farmer's market because, and then we ask people to fill in the blank. And it's just been really beautiful and hopeful to see what people say, and how heartfelt their love for their local agriculture is.
Since we just switched with the brand, it's been wonderful to see that people are starting to use the brand more and have farmers say that it feels like it's starting to take hold, it's starting to take effect. We haven't had a chance to evaluate the effectiveness yet of it, other than some dot surveys at a local event that we put on called Bite of the San Juans, and we partner farmers with chefs. And we just asked the simple question, does this brand influence your purchase decision? And I was surprised how many said yes. I thought it would be like 50-50. It was over 89% said yes. So I think we're on the right track, so that's always, it's a little heartwarming, yeah. And then even with the articles that we've been doing with the history pieces, chefs want to be part of those now, and it's getting easier, so that's wonderful.
Great. I'm inspired by that. I don't know if it feels motivating for any of you. I mean, we're in the middle of the afternoon in a dark room. But that said, this is pretty exciting. Let's open it up for conversation in the room. Because we're recording, we'll walk around with the mic for you to ask your question. But does anybody have a similar experience to share or a question?
Could you touch on a little bit on how you evaluate the success of your campaign, or how each individuals can evaluate the success of their marketing tools or something like that?
That's great. We talked about talking about that. And I didn't
Surveys,
ask
data, yeah, participant surveys, and also we've kind of built into our grant cycles doing regular evaluations. So over the course of the campaign, we've done 3 consumer research surveys, and then also participant surveys, and also tracking where our food percentage is growing both in the direct and wholesale markets. So when we started the campaign, we estimated we were about 2% of the food we were consuming was coming from our region. And now our estimation is closer to 4 to 5%. And that estimation, I can share my spreadsheet, came from Lerner out on Orcas Island, the Orcas Co-op. But it's a number of different data points pulled together, and it's like the best estimate we can get, but that's where we're at, yeah.
We're a little low-key, so we do a lot of dot surveys at events and farmers markets, but sometimes we have to be careful about preaching to the choir, that's our base. So why aren't, how do we survey people that aren't our buyers? So we're starting to do more email database surveys, and we're using our Visitors Bureau and chambers to help get that word out.
We have a pretty detailed way that we track sales at farmers markets, all 10 markets in the Gorge. And since we were helping start all those markets, all the managers are really used to this protocol, and all the vendors are really used to sharing their produce sales. There are different ways of doing that, like collecting the sales data anonymously. That might make people feel more comfortable. And I'd be happy to share more about that, but that's where we could tell, there was this double growth in the last 5 years. I think the other channels like direct sales are really difficult. We're having a really interesting conversation with some folks through Oregon State University around that now. Be happy to talk more about that, but we would love more help from all of the universities around how do you measure, the success of a local food buying campaign like that? How do you measure a healthy local food system? And I think it's really complex. It also has to do with access and SNAP and all of the other things that we should think about.
Okay, great. Well, please join me in thanking this amazing panel. Brought information to share, so there's samples of some of the marketing materials that they've developed both here and on that back table. So if there's anything that you're really interested about, go dig through that collateral and take some home with you.